Sure. Shut that door.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Mirror's off. You want it off?
Yeah.
Okay. Love you.
Diane, love you.
Yeah, I thought, really? You really have to say that to me now? Oh, sorry. We have our grandson here, so there's the wrangling back and forth. Okay, it's 3:30. Michelle, is everybody on? You want to take roll?
Be happy to. Joel Ashburner,
I am here.
Andrea Bolton,
Here.
Graham Gillette,
Here.
Sue Huppert,
Here.
and Diane Moines.
Here. Since we have a quorum, we'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Waterworks Trustees of Des Moines Waterworks. This is our June 23rd, 2020 meeting, and it's 3:30 p.m. And before we begin the agenda, I'd like to welcome our new CEO. Congratulations, Ted.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, let's get going. Our agenda today, the first item is the consent agenda, consisting of the minutes, the financial statements, list of payments, summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of $20,000, and the next meeting date. Can I have a motion and a second, and then we'll see. Well, let's do it this way. Is there anything anybody wants to pull out of there and talk about separately?
Not pull out, but Diane, I'll just mention, I hope this is an appropriate time to mention it. July's meeting will be tricky for me. I hope to be able to call in, but it is the day of the bar exam.
Oh, well.
The midpoint, you know, it's a 2-day test, and so that will be after day 1, before day 2. So I hope you'll be able to call in, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay, well, let's get a motion and a second, and then Ted can give us anything in here that he thinks should be noted.
And
Move the consent agenda.
And I'll second it.
Okay, Ted, do you have any comments on anything here that you'd like to bring to our attention before we vote?
I do not, Diane. Nothing here that I think needs to be pulled out unless there are questions.
Any questions? And really, Joel, what kind of an excuse is that?
I know.
Okay, the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Michelle, you want to do a roll call vote?
Yes, Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Huppert,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 2 is the public comment period. Is there anyone on the line that would like to make comment? And Michelle, would you like to tell people how they can do that?
Yeah, I have posted instructions in the Zoom meeting chat. If you click on the participants tab at the bottom of the screen, you can click on the raise hand button and it will raise a hand, and I will call on people in the order that they raise their hands.
All right, we'll wait a second here for people to have an opportunity.
I'm seeing none so far.
Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Item 3, action items. First item, receive and file the 2019 audit reports. Ted, would you like to talk to us about that?
Yes, absolutely. Diane, RSM, our auditor, presented the audit reports at the June 9th Finance and Audit Committee. Kristen Hughes was there, you will recall, and presented reports on not only Des Moines Waterworks internal operations, but also as collection agent for the city of Des Moines on the sewer, storm, and solid waste enterprise funds. RSM has issued an unqualified or clean opinion on each of those audits. Everything appeared to be in good order. And so staff would recommend that the board receive and file the audit reports as prepared by RSM.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second to receive and file the 2019 financial audit reports and distribute reports to the appropriate agencies. Michelle, you want to do the roll call?
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a minute, I'm looking for the next item in my packet. The next item is request authorization to reestablish the date of public hearing for as of the August 2020 board meeting. Ted, would you like to take us through that?
Yes, I would, Diane. The board will recall that this item actually came last month. Staff requested that we establish the date of the public hearing as the June board meeting. This is the East Douglas Avenue water main project. The city of Des Moines was actually going to pave East Douglas in the vicinity of East 43rd Street. They were going to repave several blocks, and then they delayed their project, but encouraged us to continue with our project, which we were happy to do because it was funded for this year and it was designed, and so we intended to move ahead with that. Unfortunately, we underestimated the additional work that we would have to add to our contract to account for the fact that the city was not going to do their contract. So there was clearing and grubbing and some grading and other things that would have been taken care of by the city that frankly took us longer to manage than we had anticipated. We also found out that a line of power poles that is in direct conflict with the proposed location of the new water main is not going to be moved until September by Mid-American Energy. So we needed to do some additional work. We're going to have to wait until the power poles are moved anyway. And so staff believed it was more appropriate to take the extra time, get things done correctly, bid this closer to the period of time when we will actually be able to do the work. That being the case, we are proposing to, or we have delayed bidding of the project, and we're asking that the board reestablish the public hearing as the date of the August board meeting. The estimate has not changed. I will point that out. Same anticipated cost. We just want to reschedule the bid and award.
Okay, I'll take a motion and second, and then Ted can take questions.
So moved.
Second.
Are there questions for Ted? Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded to authorize staff to reestablish the date of public hearing for the 2020 Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 2 as the date of August 2020 board meeting. And we will direct staff to publish notice as provided by law. Michelle, you want to take roll?
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Munns.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item C, request authorization to execute the First Amendment to the Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation operational and Des Moines Waterworks operational agreement. Ted, do you want to give us the background on this?
I do, Diane. This is obviously a Park Foundation item. And I must say the pandemic this year and the cancellations related to the pandemic has really been a hurdle for the foundation to get over, specifically as it relates to generating revenue that they need to fund their operations, but also to meet their obligations with us in terms of paying us. They are working hard. I would say they've been very creative, trying to come up with proposals for events that could be held, that could sort of highlight the new amenities in the park, keep the park and the improvements on people's minds, but doing that in a very socially distant, responsible way. We're probably not going to have concerts because of the large groups of people that tend to gather around the stage, but they are looking for some things to do to help them meet their obligations. One of the things that they have proposed is what they're calling a food vendor program or a food truck program, kind of an ongoing event where they would coordinate various food trucks or food vendors to use the facilities that have been developed for that purpose within the approved areas, but just do it as a food offering. So maybe there would be food available on Saturdays or Tuesday night taco night or whatever they might be able to arrange with various food vendors from around the city. Bring them in and try to attract people to that. An event that would not draw a big crowd that would all stay together, but would take advantage of the fact that, frankly, there are a lot of people in the park right now, probably more than traditional, more than ever, but do so in a kind of an appropriate socially distanced way. So they came to us with that proposal, and we are certainly open to that. We think it makes a lot of sense, and there are people in the park. It could bring even more people to the park. It could be just another amenity here for our visitors. But interestingly enough, none of the agreements that we have with the foundation really accommodate that sort of an ongoing day after day or week after week event. The agreements that we have with the foundation are very specific to certain types of events, rentals or park events or major events where there is one event holder. Think of a promoter who's going to bring a band or even a series of bands, and they take responsibility for the insurance and all of the other parts within the agreements that we have set up for those specific things. So that was a bit of a challenge. There really wasn't a way within the agreements that we had in place to authorize this type of additional programming. So we visited with the foundation, we visited with council, and we thought the best way to move this forward was actually to amend the original operational agreement that we have with the foundation, that first agreement that was signed all the way back in 2015. Just basically add one section to that agreement that says that this type of additional programming, not specific, but this type of additional programming is allowed, and that it can be approved by staff under certain circumstances and under other circumstances it would be brought to the board for their approval. We're looking at it basically like an individual concert, if you will. We have a series of agreements that we sign with the promoter. The staff takes care of that, but it's sort of under the purview of the board in terms of the totality of the concert venue and the events that are happening there. In this case, once the operational agreement was amended with this first amendment that is the actual action item we're bringing to the board, then there would be opportunity to enter into these agreements with the foundation for various programming. And it could be this food vendor program, but it could also be something like a movie night where various vendors would come and project a movie and people would come and watch the movie at the amphitheater. Or it could be a series of dance recitals, or who knows what it is. But if it were a short duration sort of a program, less than a year in duration for a period during the summer or whatever, we would handle that very much like we handle any individual concert. If it were a longer duration program that someone wanted to establish that would be more than a year, then that would come to the board. And that would come to the board as an addendum, or it wouldn't change the agreement, but it would just be added on to the operational agreement as an addendum. Smaller ones being approved by staff, very similar to what we do with events today. Larger ones, longer duration, longer than a year, coming to the board. Appropriate notification of the board for all the programs, just like we do each month. We have the calendar of events in the back of the board packet that shows you all the concerts that are planned, so you have a real sense of how many and what type. The programs would also be listed there. And so that's what we're proposing. We thought that was the best way, as opposed to trying to shoehorn this program into one of the existing types of events. So what we've brought to the board today is addendum number 1, which amends the operating agreement to allow these types of programs to happen in the park. And then there's also an example of the addendum, the addendum for this food vendor program, so that the board can see kind of what we have in mind. So what we're asking the board to do today is approve the first amendment to the operational agreement with the foundation, with the understanding that then these addenda would be brought along as programs are imagined.
So let's take a motion and get a second, and then we can ask questions and have discussion of this.
I'll make that motion, or I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, questions?
I've got a point. And Ted, over the last few months, we talked about moving forward, and now that you are permanently in the position, first, congratulations. But this is a great kind of example. This is a great first project for us as a board and you as a CEO to work on. I think that the last thing that this board wants to do is to micromanage the park. That's the whole reason we, work to set up the foundation, and they've done a marvelous job. I fully support the way that this is written, that staff can make certain decisions. But the reason I reference our conversations, Ted, over the last few months, including your interview, is this is one of these that you'll want to make sure that the board is informed of when the decisions are made, because complaints about the park, too much noise, too many people, food trucks in the wrong place, like it or not, those are the things that board members are going to hear from the community first. And I'm not saying anything you don't know, Ted, but this is a good opportunity to figure out how you are going to communicate with the board about these things. And I would just check this one, as this is one that probably you'll have to over communicate on, just to keep people informed of.
Yeah, I appreciate that input, Graham. And frankly, we had that exact conversation with the staff. Where do you draw the line on this? We're well aware that the board is very interested in the programming in the park. We're also aware that the board doesn't want to get into the business of approving individual concerts or individual events. That it's more of a programming that the board wants to have vision of. And so I certainly understand that. And we've tried to strike that balance with this sort of seasonal delineation, where anything that's a season or less, we will advise the board, and I think that it says with appropriate notice to the board right in the document. Anything that's more than a season, we will bring to the board for approval. And that's certainly available for discussion, but I appreciate the perspective and do understand where you're coming from, I believe.
Yeah, and I'm not questioning. I approve the way that it's written here. I think it's the appropriate step. It's just one of these things that I'm sure everyone wants to be informed about it, just because when we're out and about in the community, if that ever happens again, being out and about in the community, then we'll hear about it.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Graham that, as we try these new things, we'll want to be over-informed about what's happening until we understand how things are going to be received and how they're going to be used. And, you can look at individual events or usages and kind of think, oh, well, a dance recital of a small group, are we going to have noise? Are we going to have traffic? Is there something here that somebody's going to complain about? And try to anticipate those kinds of things, which we knew we were going to get with the concerts, and as people got used to those things. So we'll just have to see. I will say that my book club met at the waterworks near the amphitheater under the trees on Sunday night. We were all appropriately social distanced, and it would have been very nice to have food trucks there and be able to go over and get something to eat.
We're actually getting a lot of interest from varying groups because we do have so much space.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk about, well, where can we do this? And they want to be outside because that's understood to be more appropriate from a social distancing and a health perspective. And so we're getting a lot of interest. And I don't know how much activity that will actually turn into, but we'll certainly, it will be our goal to keep the board completely up to speed on what's being proposed and what's happening. So you will be able to respond to the folks who ask you questions and have
Ted,
concerns.
I have a question, and we've kind of been alluding to it with the whole pandemic and what's going on. People are wanting to be outside, but there are also gatherings of individuals that I don't think the Iowa Department of Public Health would exactly say that it's a safe environment. Rallies, that type of thing. And I appreciate this being the first modification to the operating agreement, but what kind of understanding or maybe agreement have you talked about with the foundation of ensuring that any groups that would gather there would have the appropriate social distancing and that type of thing? And the reason I ask is a couple of fold. Not just we've seen rallies that are, none of the social distancing is taking place, but also with the Iowa State Fair going on, I've read in the paper that they're looking for a place to bring all the vendors that, people need to get their state fair fix. And I would just hate to have the Iowa State Fair move to Waterworks. Not that that's going to happen, but what conversations have you had about making sure that we have the appropriate public health measures?
Sue, I'm going to make a couple comments and then I'm going to ask Mike McKernan to fill in a couple of blanks because he's had a little bit closer communication with the foundation on this. But one thing that we've shared with the foundation is we do not want to become the poster child for inappropriate social distancing. That's not our goal. We want people to be able to use the park and use it effectively and provide some value-added services in the park if we can do so and do so safely. We've talked to the foundation about including some sort of social distancing requirements in the agreements that they make with folks who would come to the park to hold an event. There's been some discussion about literally having events where they wouldn't sell tickets, they would sell squares that would literally be painted on the ground out in the great lawn, and then you would have own a square for the event, and your group would stay in the square and they would be distanced from other folks. But Michael, can you share, I seem to recall Sam mentioning specifically that they had some guidelines that they'd gotten from some organization on distancing and how that could be handled in these specific outdoor venues.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. We're just trying to stay in step with the city. The city Parks and Rec have established some dates for when some things can start heading back to normal. And within even those directions include some pointers to CDC documents in regard to encouraging and demonstrating some of the things that can be done to hold such an outdoor event. And so the first comment here is just trying to be in step with the city and the city communications. And I think that as the Park Foundation has entered into some potential discussions about some potential events, the pandemic and its potential restrictions are well in mind by both the foundation and some of the potential event promoters.
Thank you, Mike.
I just wanted to take a quick minute. I think all the comments and questions and concerns that have been shared are appropriate, and I appreciate hearing all of those. But I also wanted to thank the staff for working on this, because I know that the Park Foundation has been in a tough spot trying to figure out how to promote the park in a safe manner, how to continue to raise funds for the park so they can continue paying us and others who have made those improvements happen. So this is the first step in kind of moving things forward for them, and I appreciate the time that staff has taken to come up with this addendum and make it work for everybody.
Thank you, Andrea.
Anybody else?
Ted, quick question about the mechanism of this. Just specifically, am I understanding it right that the details of a proposed event or food truck license will be handled by the Park Foundation and then brought to staff for approval? Is that right?
What the thought is, Joel, is that the Park Foundation would work with a vendor or a series of vendors to develop a program like this specific food vendor program, and then they would bring it to us, and we would sort of iron out how we expected the details to work, and then we would have an addendum, and the addendums will be numbered. Number one is going to be this addendum related to food vendors in the park for a period of time beginning sometime after today and then ending before the end of the year. And we would work with them to incorporate all of the appropriate requirements related to licensing and operation and permits and insurance and all of those things. We would incorporate that into a fairly standard addendum document that we would sign with the Park Foundation. And then within the addendum, it requires the Park Foundation, the addendum that we sign with the Park Foundation requires the foundation to work with each of the vendors, in this case, a number of food truck vendors, to ensure that they're properly licensed and they have whatever permits they need and whatever insurance they need. In this specific example, it goes into some more detail about, we say that we would allow up to 2 food trucks to remain in the park overnight, as an example, and that no other vehicles, no other storage, no other trash could remain on site overnight. So that's the kind of specific item that might be included in an addendum depending on the specifics of the program. We would work all of those things out with the foundation in advance. We'd put that in the addendum, make that their responsibility, and then they would work with individual vendors and the people who are going to come to the park and make sure that they work within the spirit of the addendum that we have signed with them.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further on this? Okay. It has, let's see here. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the First Amendment to Des Moines Waterworks Foundation, Des Moines Waterworks Operational Agreement. Then, so authorize the chairperson to execute the First Amendment to the Waterworks Park Foundation, Des Moines Waterworks Operational Agreement. Okay, all in favor? Michelle, you want to take the roll?
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yeah.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is the award of the Northwest 26th Street Booster Station. I'd like to open the public hearing for comments from the public concerning the project's form of contract, estimated cost plans, and specifications. Michelle, do you want to again review how the public would comment?
Yeah, once again, if you would direct yourself to the chat of the meeting, I have posted instructions on there. If you are a computer user on the meeting, you can go to the participants tab at the bottom. If you click on that, then you'll see an opportunity to raise your hand to give public comment. And we'll wait for a couple seconds or so to see if anyone does. None so far.
While we're doing that, Ted, have we received any comments from the public on this project?
We have received no comments from the public.
Anything, Michelle?
Nope.
Then we will close the public hearing. The board finds that the project reflects appropriate coordination of existing infrastructure and that there are no suitable facilities available for rent or sharing in lieu of the project. I'd like a motion to approve the project's form of contract, plans and specification, and estimated cost.
So moved.
Second.
I guess at this point, well, we'll take a vote on that.
Correct.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote?
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes. Ted, would you provide an analysis of the bids and make a recommendation on this project?
Yes, I would, Diane. This is a project we've talked about many times since the original 2080 agreement was signed with the city of Polk City back in January of 2018. This is a joint project between Des Moines Waterworks and Polk City to provide additional capacity both to northern Polk County, north of Ankeny primarily, maybe a little bit of a strip west of Ankeny, and to Polk City. Two major projects involved, a transmission main and a booster station. The transmission main has been completed and is in service. This is the second project. It is the booster station. We had a lot of interest in this project when it was bid. So several prospective bidders took plans, but we had 5 bids, which is outstanding in our recent experience. The low bid was submitted by Henkel Construction, who you will all recall built the improvements in the park and did a fantastic job. Henkel's a contractor that we've had success with in the past and are pleased to have them on our bidders list. And I'm not aware that Henkel did work for us before the park improvements, so it's nice to have another contractor on our bidders list here. The engineer's estimate was 2.1 million. The low bid is well within the estimate, and staff would recommend that the board award the Northwest 26th Street booster station to Henkel Construction.
Is this an appropriate time to ask a question, or are we?
I think so. Diane, you're muted if you're giving us
Okay,
direction.
I'm unmuted now. I was going to get a motion on the table and then we can ask questions about the bids. Can I have a motion to approve the general manager's recommendation and award the Northwest 26th Street Booster Station project to Hinkle Construction Company in the amount of $1,533,000 and authorize the chairperson and CEO and general manager to execute the contract?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, now we'll take questions.
And I just reread that, the summary, and my question has been answered, so I'm good. Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, other questions about this project? In the bid? Okay, hearing none, I think we're ready for a vote.
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Moines.
Yes. Okay, the last item under action items is the COVID-19 response.
Yeah, Diana, if I may, I just give an update here on where we are. Amazingly enough, the alternate work practices that we implemented several months ago are starting to seem somewhat normal. But just to give you a few specifics on where we are with our response, both of the parks remain open. They have been open throughout this public health emergency. In alignment with the city, we have also opened our restrooms, our shelters, and the playgrounds within the park. So pretty much Waterworks Park and Maffitt Reservoir Park are open to the public for their individual or group use. Most of the scheduled park events, however, have been canceled through July. There's a nice summary in the board packet back behind the foundation's monthly update in the information items that shows all of the concerts that were scheduled and whether they've been canceled or rescheduled, so you can get a sense. The first concert still on the list is all the way out to September 4th. So much of that is related to the performers actually canceling their tours, but also, as you know, just trying to maintain social distance and do things appropriately within the parks. From a customer service perspective, as we sit here today, that the office remains closed, but it is scheduled to open to the public on Monday, June 29th. I'm sure you're aware, but many of the surrounding communities have already opened their city halls and their waterworks. We are proposing to open our main office to the public on Monday. When the office does reopen, we are going to ask customers to wear face masks. We will provide free face masks to them if they don't have a mask. The number of customers in the building will be limited. We are going to have a guard at the door, actually sort of functioning as a doorman, allowing people in, offering them a mask, telling them that masks are required. We will attempt to provide appropriate social distancing within the building. We've got stanchions and ropes that we have provided and floor markings like you've seen in many places to help with that. We've installed plexiglass shields at each of the customer service stations. The customer service representatives will be wearing masks even though they're behind the plexiglass shield, and they will be provided with hand sanitizer, as will the customers that the customer service reps can use following each customer interaction. So we're trying to get in a position where a number of our cash-only customers can come to the office and pay their bills before we begin or before we resume our normal collection processes. We do anticipate that normal collection processes will resume in mid-July. There's been a concerted effort between utilities across the state to sort of align there, and mid-July is where most people are shooting for. So around the beginning of July, we will start to change our messaging to customers. We continue to send termination notices. For the last 3 months, those notices have said, you know, you're past due, but we're not going to turn you off. If you are having trouble paying, please call us. That messaging is going to change to let customers know well in advance that they are past due and that they will need to pay, and if they don't make arrangements, that service will be terminated. We also are continuing with our courtesy calls. You know, we call each customer before their service would be terminated and let them know. We've changed that message a couple of months ago to say, hey, if you're behind and you're having difficulty paying, please call us and make arrangements. We'll work with you. We're not terminating service, but we don't want you to get too far behind. We will change that message again here near the end of the month to say terminations will resume. Please contact us to make arrangements so that your service isn't terminated. From a revenue perspective, revenue remains steady. Delinquent amounts on residential accounts increased by about 25% very early on in this public health emergency, but that 25% number has stayed pretty steady. So we started about with an accounts receivable on the residential accounts of about 1.2 million and increased to about 1.6, and it's just kind of held there in that 1.6 range, which is very positive. But we have canceled more than 6,000 individual service terminations. So we have literally a mountain of those collections that we need to deal with, and we're hopeful that people are getting back to work and they're getting back on their feet, and when we start communicating that it's time to resume our normal collection processes, that they'll begin to pay and we'll get back to normal. So we're moving in that direction, but we're trying to do so very thoughtfully and in a way that allows customers plenty of time to get a hold of us and make payment. Any questions about that? Because I do think it's very important that we all understand where we're at and that we're moving forward.
I'll remind everyone that we have been ratifying this emergency plan as it evolves, and the staff is taking different directions and making some decisions on the COVID response and reentry, for lack of a better word. So if I can have a motion to ratify the plan as Ted outlined it and as it's outlined in your packet, and a second, and then any questions that we have, Ted can answer before we vote.
So moved.
Second.
Ted, I do have just a statement I was looking up, because you said many of the cities have already opened, and I thought I had heard, and I do believe, City of Des Moines, their statement is still regarding City Hall that they are closed until at least July 6th. So we're actually opening a little before their planned date at this point. I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Yeah, that is correct. I think, Sue, the other water utilities in the metro have opened their offices, and maybe I misspoke there, but Urbandale, West Des Moines Water, the other, you know, Clive, Johnston, whatnot, the communities where they manage their own water systems. I think many of those city halls are open, but thank you for that clarification. City of Des Moines City Hall will remain closed until at least July 6th.
Ted, I'm going to emphasize what I think you already have planned to do, but I want to emphasize it because it's important to me, and I think it's probably important to most of us, that as we resume these collections with, and more importantly, terminations, I'd like to, be informed of what those numbers look like. Just because there's a little bit of an unknown out there of how how much of a crunch some of our customers are in. And so as those, as the team collects those numbers, I'll be interested to know if there are significant problems or any trends that we should consider as we go back to fully implementing this. I'm not questioning what you're doing or what's being proposed here at all. I would just want to track it.
Absolutely. We will ensure that we keep you up to date on that. One other thing I just want to point out, because I didn't quite get to it, most of the employee health and safety initiatives remain in place. We're doing many of the same things. We did get our secondary control center up and running, and it's being staffed now. And so we do have 2 locations where our control center operators can work out of, so that there's some distancing and some separation between those folks. And then the additional cost of the COVID-19 response to date is approximately $940,000. Now, the vast majority of that is our initial sequestering response that you're all very familiar with, but then there's some additional cost in there for enhanced cleaning and PPE and those kind of things. So that number has gone up much more slowly in the last 6 weeks than it did in the first 8 weeks or so. And we are working with the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and FEMA for possible reimbursement of those costs under FEMA Declaration 4483DR, whatever that stands for, but that's their declaration related to this emergency. So we're working on that as we speak to try to get those costs reimbursed.
I understand that working with FEMA can be a challenge. How is that process going? Are we seeing any light at the end of the tunnel, or any hope that we will be reimbursed, even if it's a partial reimbursement for those funds?
We really haven't gotten any feedback yet. There's a process that you go through and indicate that you intend to submit, and we went through that process and said that we were going to have costs. We intended to submit them, and they responded very quickly that housing people in trailers was normal operation and that they wouldn't cover those costs. And we have since responded pretty adamantly that that is not normal operation. We've got a lot of industry organizations and other utilities on our side in this one, Andrea. And while FEMA, it can be challenging to work with, I'm hopeful, but honestly, we have received no indication from them yet as to whether they will be reimbursing us or not. We're making provisions for funding that if we have to, if they do not reimburse us. So, we're not going to be short of cash if it doesn't happen, but we're going to press for them to reimburse that as an emergency operation, which it clearly is. And we've got some other opportunities. Graham actually helped me find some resources that can help us if we get denied to follow up and take another swing at that. But we're working through the normal channels first, trying to use the influence of our industry associations and our legislators who are all on our side on this one. And then if that doesn't work, we're still not done. We'll take another run at them. So more to come on that, to be sure.
Other questions? Ted, I have a quick question, and it is maybe for the rest of the board. You and I talked about when we would think about resuming in-person meetings. And I guess that's a question, and this is probably a time that is appropriate for us to talk about that. I don't think I'm comfortable yet, but would like to hear from the rest of the board how this is going, and if we continue this, and if there's any changes that they'd like made.
And if I might, Diane, add just a couple of points to that conversation before we hear from the rest of the board. We have separated the boardroom into a number of small cubicles, and we actually have customer service representatives working in there right now, so that they're socially distanced. Our call center is a very open air space, and we felt that it was appropriate to try to provide them individual work areas. And so that's working very effectively. I just share that because we are going to need a little bit of time to undo that and move people back into the call center when the time comes. It's certainly our intent right now to have all of the board meetings, committee meetings, and full board meeting in July in the same manner that we're having this meeting today. So I think Diane's point is an excellent one, that as we look out further, if we're starting to think that in August it would be more appropriate for us to get together in person, this would be a great time to have that conversation and provide some direction.
Have we have any public feedback about, or stakeholder feedback about the ability to participate in any of our board meetings, given the technology setup?
You know, Andrea, we haven't had any negative feedback, certainly. And frankly, I will say that we've had more people listening into our board and committee meetings since they were virtual. I don't know that we've had more involvement, but we've had more people listening in. Today is an exception. I think we're mostly staff here today and board, but some of our board and committee meetings have been fairly well attended. And I can say that we have not had concerns, at least not that have come to me, about doing them this way.
And I would add that when we resume meeting in person, that we can continue to broadcast like this so that people can dial in. I know for board members that are traveling, this would be preferable over a conference call, but just on a regular basis, even when all 5 of us and the staff are available, I think it's a convenient and low cost way for us to allow the community to participate.
I agree, Graham, and I hope that we make it a slow, gradual process with everyone's comfort. You know, at least where I work, through the end of August, we are discouraging people from, even if they're on campus, to set up Zoom meetings to limit the number of people that are coming to campus. In fact, not invite people to campus, but encourage meetings like this. So I know you need to make plans around it, Ted. I would be very comfortable if at least through the end of August, we continued to plan to meet like this. And then as everyone is comfortable, it doesn't mean everyone would have to return, but you know, maybe we could allow 25% of the board or 50% of the board to come back. If people were traveling, they could take the open slot to be able to call in. But I'd like to see if we could do it in a gradual and responsible way, but also give you the time to utilize that space. I would propose through the end of August, just so we all know.
I agree, only in part because this is my current boardroom.
Yeah, that's not fair.
I'm getting tired of your view.
Yeah. I don't, you know, and Graham, when this is, when the time is appropriate, you've got to share with us what internet service provider you use when you're 50 miles from town and you have better internet than I have a mile from here.
We are very fortunate. We have a strong broadband that comes up the trail buried so that it doesn't even come down off the wire. And so I have faster service here than I have at home.
Wow. Well, it's been pretty rock solid. That's amazing. Well,
Maybe we'll have to have a retreat there sometime.
That's right. Have a distance board meeting.
Yeah. Well,
be amazing.
I agree with Sue. I think continuing, this has worked really well for me, and I think continuing at least through August makes sense. So
I appreciate that feedback and direction, and I think it might be wise for us to have a quick conversation about this each month and just look forward another month and see what we feel. And then that would give us plenty of opportunity to get things rearranged and set up once the board is comfortable with moving back in. But we will plan on July and August meetings being virtual. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, I don't want anyone to, even if we decide that we are going to open up, I want it to be for those who feel comfortable coming. If there's any reason that you have vulnerable people in your household or you yourself are, that it doesn't make sense for you, then I think we'll use the technology to accommodate people. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to ratify the COVID-19 emergency action plan that's outlined in your packet for this month. Can we have a roll call vote?
Ashburner,
Yes.
Bolton,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Munns.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to information items, board committee reports. I know the planning committee had the audit presentation. Is there anything else?
I think that was actually finance and audit. We had the presentation. So
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say my memory's kind of bad, but that seems really off to me. Actually, the planning committee met and talked about the gallery system and the valve structures, which to me, the gallery system is one of the most fascinating parts of the utility. And so kind of having the opportunity to learn more about how we do inspections and how we move forward to keeping everything in a sustainable shape I appreciated hearing that. But for those of you that were not on the call, so a quick summary there is Waterworks had tried to go through the 3 miles of our gallery system, and please, Mike or Ted, correct me if I'm doing a terrible job explaining this. But try to go through the 3 miles of our gallery system to inspect it for any obstructions or any problems. But really, we're having a difficult time getting in there because of our valve system. And so we are now looking at how we rehabilitate the valve vault structures here during 2020 to be able to actually get into the gallery system. Is that a fair description or anything else to add?
I think you did a nice job there. We want to do a condition assessment on the gallery, and there are some issues with valves and vaults that are preventing that. So we've got $400,000 in this year's budget to go after some of that, and we hope to see you in another month or two on that with some permission to bid.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I actually sat through that presentation. Finance and Audit Committee.
You said it. We had the audit presentation that we voted on today.
Yeah. Customer relations.
Customer relations, we discussed collection practices, and Amy gave a little presentation on how they are being amended due to the pandemic.
Bill Stowe Memorial Committee.
Sure, and I'll address both the Stowe Memorial Committee and then the Botanical Garden. We haven't done much on the Stowe Memorial Committee through the pandemic. I think we'll have a discussion here yet this summer about when's the appropriate time to re-engage on that front. The Botanical Garden is slowly reopening, like a lot of entities around town. Now that Ted, your position is permanent, I think it is time for us to have that conversation with the Botanical Garden that we've been talking about our long-term agreements with them. I will send out an email, Ted, that I'll copy you on to Stephanie over at the Botanical Garden to set that meeting up. And also you and I, Ted, probably should have a conversation, obviously, before we go to that meeting, but it's going to be important for us to have that conversation and begin to think about what our long-term relationship is.
Agreed.
And we've had the report from what's been going on with the Park Foundation Board. Is there anything additional there that wasn't in the packet or that we didn't discuss?
I think you got the bulk of it. I think really what the group has been focusing on is that fundraising and also how to promote the park. So it's nice to hear that your book club met there, and if there's any other opportunity to encourage folks to get out and use the park in a responsible manner, I encourage you all to share that. Oh, wait, I do have one other thing. The sculpture, the recently the river constellation, thank you, was recently nominated as one of the top 100 public art installations in the world. And so you have an opportunity to go to a website that I can provide you all if you didn't receive that from Sam, and vote for the river constellation. It's a really incredible piece of art, and check it out and share with your friends and increase those votes. And I don't know, Ted, if you want to have anything else to add to that.
I would like to say a couple other things, Andrea. That was on my list too. I'm glad you brought it up. One is that when you go to that website and you see the amazing pieces of art all over the world that River Constellation is in competition with, it's unbelievable. Some of them are really breathtaking, and our piece of public art here in Waterworks Park is right there among them. You can only vote once, as it turns out. I know from experience. They've got some technology there that doesn't let you just click away. But if Andrea can share the website, codaworks.com. It appears to be an organization that facilitates public art installations by putting installers in contact with artists, in contact with fabricators, and it's a community out there related to the public art world, but just amazing stuff, and what an honor. I think that the group from the foundation who was involved in facilitating that, and Graham, I believe Katie and Proctor were kind of the two lead people on getting proposals for Katie Gillette and Proctor Lorman were the two people who were responsible for that, and they really did an outstanding job and should be proud of what we have here. No one has complained about the barn being gone since that sculpture went up.
I will add on that sculpture, if you haven't already, you also have an opportunity to be a part of that. They're selling rings, much like the bridge at Gray's Lake, where you can either have your own name or have it in honor of someone else, and those rings will be installed on individual light, pieces of the light post. So if you haven't done that yet, that's kind of a cool thing.
Did you have anything else, Ted?
I do, Diane. We talked about a couple of the things on my list already, but two other quick things. One, I just want to say thank you to the board for the opportunity to serve in this role on a non-interim, I don't know permanent is the right word, but a non-interim basis. It's such an honor to me to be included in this group of outstanding folks who've been general manager. I've always been proud to work for Des Moines Waterworks. We have such a great staff and an engaged board, and I am really excited about the opportunity. So thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with the process. I know it was difficult during this pandemic and maybe not ideal timing, but thank you for all your time and effort that you put into this and for getting to this point. And I look forward to working with you moving forward to accomplish all of the goals that we discussed during the interview process. So thank you. for your support and trust. And secondly, just to make all of you aware, I visited with some of you already, but a good friend of the board, Laura Sarcone, has accepted a position as the supervisor of our customer service call center and will be moving into that role in the middle of July. That's a great opportunity for Laura. A bit of a loss to me personally. Laura has been really my right hand, maybe my right arm and leg altogether. I don't know, but she's really helped me out in the last 14 months. And she has agreed to help me through the transition as we talk about what we need here in this area, what makes sense in terms of filling that position, and is there anything different we want to do as we look forward at our priorities. So congratulations to Laura, and we'll be looking at how and when and who will fill her position here in the near term.
Ted, if I could just add something. First of all, Laura, congratulations. That's great news. I think there are also a number of our staff members that were extremely helpful through this CEO process. And Michelle Watson, you are amazing. The way that you continued to keep all of us up to date on which Zoom, which GoToMeeting. I really appreciate the personalized agenda that you gave each of us and told us where to be and when. Doug Garnett, thank you so much for the role that you played in steering us. So I know that is something that we're all glad to have behind us, but there were a couple of staff members that I just thought played a real key role, and I appreciated it, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all share the comments that Sue just made. So thanks, everyone. I went over the government outreach update, so I will include that with the contract status spreadsheet and the lien certification and reversals. Anybody have any questions about any of those, or questions for Ted generally, or anything for the good of the cause before we adjourn? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Thank you.